Sports fans, get ready for Sportz-USA. Get sports from a personal point of view from seasoned professionals who've reported and lived the stories. Now let's go to the crew high atop the Sportz-USA press box. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Sportz-USA.com. I'm John Askins this afternoon and joined by Bo Carter, Executive Director of the National Collegiate Baseball Writers Association. We got John Kearns up in the Intermountain West region at Grand Junction. And today we've got another special guest, Sebastian Perez Navarro, coming in from El Paso. And I had invited Sebastian to talk about some topics that blew out the window, with the major headlines today. And with us in Amarillo, we've also got Lee Baker, who is very busy on the golfing side, but we'll get to that in a minute. But let me read you guys a story today. You may not have heard this. A pair of Texas Longhorn football players and 3 non-student athlete members of the athletic department has committed sports wagering violations this past season, according to the hometown newspaper, the Austin American-Statesman. Guys, we've just been inundated by these stories about Brendan Sorsby at Texas Tech, and I think I want to try and bring some facts to the situation. I just was so disgusted by what I saw on the internet yesterday, and even ESPN was reporting had not done any research and was reporting just out-and-out false accusations. Let me just start by saying that Texas Tech did not sue the NCAA. Brendan Sorsby and an independent attorney, all Tech did sued the NCAA and got an injunction, a temporary injunction, and all Tech did was give him emotional support. Now, I was talking to Bo here off the air that I think it was a mistake, and you can, in previous episodes, you could see Tom Russo and I, who went to school at Texas Tech, were saying we hope he never plays because given the situation that it's a temporary injunction, that's going to be hanging over everyone. The NCAA is not going to give up, and they'll file appeals. But one of the things that was erroneously reported was that there was going to be action during this year. In the injunction, it specifically states that there can be no appeal until 2027, which will be after the football season if Sorsby, does play for Texas Tech. Also, I want to point out that all betting that Sorsby was accused of doing was prior to going to Texas Tech. What about Cincinnati, guys? What about Indiana in this situation? To me, there should be an investigation into the Cincinnati Bearcat program because all they did, they said that they were aware of his betting, and all they did was pass him off to Tech and say nothing. The third thing I'd like to bring out is that it was erroneously reported is that it was some Texas Tech alumni that was just the judge in Lubbock. That was not the case at all. There was a Texas Tech judge that recused himself from the case, and they brought in nonpartisan judge from Fort Worth who was an alumni of the University of Texas and University of Houston Law School. So ESPN was reporting that it was a local, Lubbock judge that did this. And you guys can just chime in. Coach K, I know you've probably read a lot about this over the last couple of days. What's your feeling about what's going on?
Well, it's shocking. To say the least. We knew what was going to happen. We kind of had that feeling. We've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks that, it pretty well leaning toward him getting, what he was wanting. Everybody today court shopping, looking
Exactly.
for a place where, your possibility of getting a favorable decision increases dramatically. Well, that was what they did. And again, I still am looking for what kind of recrimination is going to come back on Indiana and Cincinnati. The fact, these bets all took place there.
Right.
Under those institutions' control. And so all of a sudden now, all the mud, and I feel sorry for you guys, John, you and Tom, because being alum of Tech, and Tech's a good school, it's a great school. But right now they're catching the brunt of the mud from this, and it's undeservedly being directed their way. So I am shocked. I mean, if this comes to pass, and the other thing that kind of amazed me, how can a judge impose a 2-game suspension? I mean,
Well, that was
like, where,
agreed. That was agreed upon. That's what
well,
they
I mean,
went
but
in and asked for.
that's totally, trespassing on, the institution's right. It's totally trespassing on, NCAA. I mean, if this all comes to pass, NCAA died this week.
Well, I think you're right. I think that the NCAA has been proven to have, as we mentioned last week, to
And
be
until
completely
some
toothless.
legislation happens, until they get some kind of quasi antitrust protection like the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, this is going to be continued. Everything is going to be litigated. Everything's going to be decided in the courts. And so it saddens me to say the
Lee,
least.
what's your opinion?
Well, I said 2-3 weeks ago that he would be found okay to play. The irony of this is the 7th of the next court they go to is in Amarillo. It's a federal court, and all 3 judges are Texas Tech grads.
I think there's 3 or 4 judges on the appeals court, and they're all Tech alumni.
Perfect.
Yeah, so there are lots of them here in Amarillo, so 3 of them are going to be the ones to hear it. Yeah, I don't think it's really going to matter, because I thought I read somewhere where that may not even be until next year. I'm not sure how sure
that was in the agreement. In the injunction, it says that and that was another thing that ESPN suddenly found out and reported, that the injunction is going to be stayed until 2027. So that's after the football season is over. Yeah, well, I'm reading right now, ESPN headline: a Texas court scheduled Texas Tech football trial against the NCAA for February 8, 2027, 2 weeks after the college football national championship. Gee, guys, thanks for doing your homework. You should have been reporting that yesterday.
Yeah.
And let me be clear, Texas Tech's not going to be in any championship playoff this year. That's another thing that's being discussed by the College Football Playoff Association, banning Texas Tech from the playoffs.
That's always a possibility there. And again, if that was the headline that you just read, they still have it wrong. Texas Tech isn't suing. Sorsby is suing.
That's exactly right.
I mean, so the fact is, they just keep adding insult to injury, and get your facts, dudes. Get your facts.
They repeat hearsay, and they're such a rush to get a story out, to take advantage of all the clicks. And the funniest story that I saw yesterday, but yet people pick up on it and repeat it, is that Texas Tech, the softball team, is under investigation for corking their bats. If anybody can explain to me how you cork a metal bat, I'll be glad to. And we're welcoming Kevin along as well from the Dallas area. Kevin, just give us your opinion about what's going on.
Well, everybody I've seen, any commentator I've seen, is just incredulous. They just can't believe it. They say they've never seen anything like it. How is the NCAA about to police their own organization now when a guy can just go to a courtroom and get it overturned like that? Now, I guess the logic that the judge used is really getting ridiculed, as to why he's going to go ahead and give this guy a chance to play. We can't take his football away from him when he's in the middle of therapy or whatever.
Well, that was a very shrewd defense that his lawyer came up with. The lawyer didn't go in and attack the NCAA and say that they had no authority to do this. What he did was, just like in a trial about mental health, he appealed to the judge in that vein, saying that, his client would be severely damaged, if he was found to be ineligible to apply his trade because he had this addiction. And when you think about it from that angle, it does make sense. But you're right. The NCAA is completely been blown out of the water. The headline that I saw is that Sorsby has blown a hole in the NCAA that it will never be able to recover from.
I'd say that's accurate. I'd say that's absolutely accurate. If what are we going to do when the next guy comes up? And, didn't a player from Iowa get suspended last year because he bet on one game and it was a girls' game at his school or something?
Yeah, and you aren't with us, but let me repeat a story that just came out, the Austin American-Statesman. There are a pair of Texas Longhorn football players and 3 non-student athlete members of the program there that have committed sports wagering, and Texas reportedly self-reported, and that's been swept underneath the rug. And I think you're going to see this spread to every major program in the country. I think that 95% of any athletic director's job at a major school is trying to mitigate some scandal before it ever reaches proportions getting picked up by the local media. Wouldn't you say, Bo, that just about every school has had their, problems?
It's totally right. And John, some, in a smaller school like a Mississippi State or a Georgia Southern or somewhere, they can really, the schools can come in and say, well, we really don't want you to report this, or we'll blackmail. Not quite to that point.
We'll take your press pass away.
Yeah, you could ruin us for life, so don't do this. You got to live with us. But it's man, it is a total. And John, the best thing you pointed out, and it's been throughout the discussion. Here's an example: the attorneys for the House settlement, the $20.5 million required for each school, made $520 million in the settlement, and they stand to make another $250 to $300 million over the next 5 years. This is one of the biggest legal money grabs by the law profession since Moses had the 10 Commandments.
Well, this doesn't justify what's going on, but I can tell you that the very first NCAA Division I school that I worked for, the basketball coach went to the booster club to ask them to raise $50,000 to pay for an abortion that their star basketball player was having to pay for because he got his girlfriend pregnant. Now, that's the kind of stuff that people are unaware of that really goes on around every major program. That's why I said the ADs, most of their time is spent in damage control. Mm-hmm. And with that a point, let me bring in Sebastian Perez Navarro, who is our correspondent out in the El Paso area. Sebastian, I was originally going to get you on to talk about softball, but from a young person's standpoint, how do you perceive what's going on?
Well, first of all, obviously there is a precedent in sports that when you gamble, you don't come back. You don't have the opportunity to. And one of the most recent cases, at least at a professional level, is Jonte Porter. He had recently, back in 2024, been promoted to the National Basketball Association after playing for a lower division team to go play for the Toronto Raptors. But then the league found that Porter was giving information that he wasn't supposed to give to bookies. So he got the boot. You also think of prominent players like Pete Rose who aren't in the Hall of Fame because of their history gambling. And history says one thing: when you gamble, you cannot play. Simultaneously, in a lot of areas of sport, it's not only the athletes who aren't allowed to gamble, but it's the employees, whether you're on a staff that focuses on marketing or broadcasts. So it goes for the whole entity to keep one thing, and that is integrity, right? There's also a flip side to the argument that sports betting has maybe become a little too normalized and feels more like an accessible game rather than actually gambling money.
Right, it's right there on your phone. Yeah.
What I think this conversation is leading to, or at least alluding to, is one of the bipartisan pieces of legislation that has recently been promoted by the Senate, and that is the Protect College Sports Act, which has a ton of areas to do with the name, image, and likeness. But this also establishes something key, and that is trying to give power back to the NCAA with an antitrust exception that allows the NCAA to put down their own rules, therefore possibly circumventing any of these judge orders or political processes, because now this will be laid down by the law. Some people agree with the legislation and others don't.
Well, what it is a federal solution to every district court coming up interpreting things in their own area. differently. And I support that. I don't think that every little district should have the ability to overturn, the NCAA's guidelines, or else we're living in chaos. Lee, I mean,
Yeah.
we could have an Amarillo judge rule this is okay, and a judge in Boise, Idaho say, well, this is okay. It would be complete chaos and anarchy.
I think that happens a lot in the legal profession the way it is these days. Everybody can go to court and get done whatever they want. I just think it's fascinating. First off, you're a tech guy. You graduated from tech, but could you ever imagine the day when Texas Tech would be the evil guys in the world of college sports, of all schools? And number two, now all of a sudden, I love this thing where now teams say they don't want to play Tech or they're not going to schedule. I mean, some teams
Right.
already have them on some schedules. What do you think of the ramifications that might be if indeed it were to happen? Although I was watching someone a while ago who said there's no way they're going to cancel any kind of football games. Football makes too much money. It doesn't matter where the game is played and who it's against. They're still going to play.
Well, I want to tell you a story. This sort of ties into this. There was already a move underfoot in the SEC for whatever reason that it was started by the softball coach at Tennessee. Tennessee hired a Texas Tech softball coach, and then they got into a little brouhaha behind the scenes. And the head coach of Tennessee talked to the other SEC softball coaches, and they agreed to not play Texas Tech. And the reason they didn't want to play Texas Tech is they wanted to take sort of like a revenge against them, and by not having the opportunity to play those schools, Texas Tech's RPI would be lower, and that's exactly why they were seeded 11th in the softball tournament. Okay, so and there's a great article you can look it up. Just Google did the SEC softball teams decide not to play Texas Tech this year? And what happened is that that sort of progressed, and Tech went through, and didn't suffer harm by that lower seed. But now, what do you think Steve Sarkisian's comments in football? What do you think that was about? That they're not going to. I laughed out loud when I saw that Georgia AD say that he wasn't going to play Texas Tech. They never did. They wouldn't schedule him today.
I know.
And it's just for some reason Tech
Like
is
me saying I'm not going to the opera anymore.
That's right. That's right.
exactly. For some reason, Kevin, I don't know why, but Texas Tech is perceived as trying to crash the country club, and these schools in the blue blood schools are being vindictive against them. And I guess they could say, we'll never play you in any sports and get away with it. But don't you think that, Coach K, there would be some sort of antitrust case that Tech could bring against those people?
Well, I think that's one of the first steps would be the fact that, again, litigation seems to be the key word today. And, if you don't get what you want or you feel like you're being persecuted, taken advantage of, take it to court. And I think, again, they'd have an excellent case because there's all kinds of communiques, emails, things, that come out and
They could come out in a court case too.
Oh,
that's
yeah,
right.
very damning information. Lots of stuff that you wouldn't even want, even if it didn't pertain to the case itself. Information would be out there for everyone to see. And, don't hang out your dirty laundry, folks, because a lot of folks are going to get a good glance.
Man, you do not throw rocks if you live in glass houses. And every NCAA program is a glass house.
But, John, you made a point about Georgia, them saying we're not playing Tech. Well, when did they ever play Tech?
That's what he was saying.
Ever.
Okay, how about Nebraska?
Yeah.
We're not playing Tech. Well, last time they played Tech, Mike Leach hung 60 points on
Yeah,
them.
they're still butt hurt from that, back those 2 60-point outings against the Huskers. So it's silly, but it's not. And this is really, and it comes down to now, you're hurting the whole reputation of an academic institution that really shouldn't even be included in this. This should be against the University of Cincinnati.
Well, John, you're talking about Georgia and Nebraska. Like we said, big deal. They don't play Tech anyway.
Right.
I mean, if TCU and Oklahoma State came forth and said, we're not playing Tech anymore, that might have some teeth to it. But, that's a nice grandstand play by the AD at Georgia to make himself look so righteous.
Yeah.
That, by golly, we're not going to tolerate this.
And this is a program that just was trying to cover up the death of an employee and a student athlete. They were involved. What was it? Off-campus road racing.
I think
that's
so.
about the same thing as this. Tech didn't have anything to do with Sorsby suing.
Not to mention, Georgia has had 25 players arrested.
Jailed, I think.
Since 2023.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For everything you want to, everything under the sun. So, I think this is nothing more than the Georgia coach kind of showboating, how we believe in righteousness at Georgia and using Tech for an example when, like we said, they don't play Tech anyway. Big deal.
Sebastian, how easy is it for you to get on your phone? And if you decided you wanted to place a bet, how easy is that?
So this is something that I've researched with my debate team, and it's really simple. All you have to do is download an application, you put in your information, and right off of there, you're allowed to start placing parlays or other items. Because the way that this functions, especially in states that still technically have sports betting banned, is that it's not sports betting that you're doing, it's fantasy sports. That's
Right.
why you bet on the overs and unders. You're not directly gambling, you're more so playing a game. And it's really accessible to anyone who's 18 or over.
Well, and don't they normally give you like $500, free money to start with, something like that?
Typically, there are promo codes so that.
Now, I know Bo Carter has to go. He's going off to the College World Series tomorrow.
All right.
Bo, tell us what the baseball writers do up there.
It's a lot of fun, John. Dick Hauser Trophy will be given out for the 39th time this year. Skipped it in 2020 during the COVID era, but they're amongst 5 really good finalists nationwide. And then Harrison, the Big 12, is one of the 5 finalists out of that group, but really outstanding group. We also do an NCAA Stopper of the Year. In the last 2 years, we've done the Tony Gwynn Community Service Award, which is really a neat deal, open to any Division I player in the United States that's done exemplary baseball players done eventually.
And there's a great player, a great
public
example
service.
for a human
that's
being.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the few things you hear of anymore or whatever, too.
Right.
Oh, John, one other point, and I'll go back to what we're talking about. Don't mean to belabor the point, but you hit the nail on the head. The Texans invading the country club in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in the SEC, when a Mississippi State or a Vanderbilt or a South Carolina or somebody got knocked off Alabama or Auburn or Georgia or Ole Miss, immediately they called an NCAA investigator. I mean, they all were doing the same things essentially, but they would clam up, and the NCAA investigators, they bring their investigators to the country club campuses, and they'd implicate the proletarian school. So
Right.
with no NCAA rules now, it's pretty much open game. But anyway,
in last week's edition, we did pretty well on our predictions, guys. We predicted West Virginia would get in, and those Troy Trojans, they're in. We picked North Carolina. We missed on the Ole Miss Auburn choice. Auburn, surprisingly, they were one of the hottest teams, coming into the tournament. They got knocked off, and the Oklahoma Sooners are going back to Omaha. Alabama, Texas, and Georgia. Those were all pretty easy picks. Right now, I want to say this ties in the big money, the odds, the betting odds are on the Georgia Bulldogs to take the championship there in the tournament.
Pretty
Coach?
even on North Carolina, too.
Yeah, North
Yeah.
Carolina's good. Yeah.
I mean, the odds themselves are almost identical on North Carolina and Georgia. I mean, they're the odds-on favorites going into this. And, and then you got Troy, coming in. They're going to be the crowd favorite. The one we talked about last week.
They'll
the
be
one
adopted by
they're the
Omaha
one that get
community.
adopted by the whole Omaha
Right.
community. So, it's exciting. Oklahoma finally, 2022, last time they were there. So hopefully they can make some noise again. They did a pretty good job that year. And so, like I said, the one thing that, like Bo and I were talking earlier, is the fact, home runs, Jiminy Christmas, the runs that are being scored. I used to say, and I said it over and over, pitching wins championships. Who's got the best pitchers?
But the chicks
Doesn't seem to be the
like the
case
long
right
ball,
now.
right?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
who's got the
right.
biggest bat? I mean,
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
I wanted to ask Sebastian. Sebastian, you saw both Texas Tech and Oklahoma come through, and you broadcasted those teams. Before the World Series started, what was your opinion on those two teams? What was your thought of who was going to win?
Truthfully, I thought that both teams looked incredibly strong, and the story with Oklahoma is something simple. Last year, you don't see the success that you've seen in the years prior when you win 4 national championships in a row because your core is young. Now, this year, that core becomes older. Simultaneously, you have transfers from all around the country that comes to play for your program, and Oklahoma had a really strong start to the season. To see them lose against Mississippi State is truly something unprecedented. You
Yeah, it
don't
was
have a
shocking.
legend like
Yeah.
Patty Gasso breaking a 9-season streak of constantly going to the
Yeah.
Women's College World Series. I truly thought that Oklahoma was a contender to take the title back from Texas. And you shift on over to Texas Tech. Cornell, we talked about this. Texas Tech did a great job in the offseason fixing what lost them the national championship a year ago. Their pitching staff. They get stronger pitchers to support Nigeria Kennedy. And in that depth that they were able to create, it truly seemed like the Red Raiders this year were going to go all the way. Because
Yeah,
last year, it was very much a premature program. And now this season, the expectations are way higher. You have players wanting to play for your program, and you get swept by the Longhorns. Not even one game won, unlike the season past.
Yeah, Coach, why do you think that the Tech pitching staff just sort of didn't do as well this year as last?
I think, we talked about it last week. And again, I got to give Michael credit, your son.
Mhm.
He went with the Longhorns, and he said his reasoning, they expected to win.
Yeah.
Tech
Right.
wanted to win. It's that mindset going into a short series like that. And I think, again, we talked about it. I think their arms, just got worn out. The fact is, you looked at it and not the same as you saw earlier in the season. And I agree with Michael. Michael made a believer out of me. Texas just expected to win. They owned the mindset of that series.
Right. And
And
Kevin picked them. Kevin, why
Yeah,
did you
he
pick
called it.
Texas?
Just because they're Texas. I mean,
Well, that's the same thing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
you know, the brand name was there and whatnot. And then that relief pitcher they've got, and I can't even remember her name, but God almighty, she was something else. And, I figured as long as they had her around, they were going to be in about every game they played.
Well, let's dispel the myths on this. Once again, Tech, the corporate raider, if you will, coming in and outspending everybody. The team with the number one softball budget in the country was the Oklahoma Sooners at $7.7 million. Guess who was next? Tennessee at $5.8 million. Tech came in at 3.6, and the Longhorns were at the same level. But I think the difference between Tech and Texas was that Tech sort of inverted their approach to recruiting. They allocated nearly 30% of their softball pool to going after people that would make an instant impact, basically put them on the radar screen, while Texas, they not only had that $3.6 million softball budget, but they've got all kinds of other money that they can, fund their different programs. But their strategy has historically been avoid chasing those multi-million-dollar transfers, but just investing their budget into high school development. And so that I think is what paid off for Texas, because their team was basically more high school recruits than just instant, I don't know what you would call it.
Instant gratification.
Gratification.
Yeah, instant gratification. Exactly. Exactly. Bo, I know you have to
Yeah.
leave.
On that
So-
note, I appreciate you guys. I'll send some video from.
Yeah, we'll get video from the ceremony. When is the Player of the Year announced? Tomorrow?
Friday. No, yeah, Friday at 10 a.m.
Friday. That's right. Right.
And Emma, sorry, bad plug.
You know, I don't want to press you on it, but I think that catcher from the University of Georgia is probably one of the leading candidates.
To say the least,
What's his statistics?
for the first 2020 home run stolen base catcher in 93 years of SEC baseball.
Wow.
And also
Whoa.
20
Whoa.
total of now 26 stolen bases, 31 homers, 88 or 396 batting average. The guy's just he's off the charts really, and a good. This is based partly on character too. Except for maybe Landon Harrison, who threw a bat 30 feet up in the air when he struck out. He got suspended in the Nebraska. I think they voted before the suspension, but.
Right.
No, I guess if there were, I won't say betting line on this, don't want to fuel the flames, but he's probably one of the strong favorites. But thank
you. Always enjoy it. How many years in a row now have you gone to the College World Series?
I missed a couple. We had a death in the family one year, and I think it's been like 27 of the last 30. So really looking forward to going. Got to get some steaks and some homemade bratwurst at Schwab Park up there.
Well, I've had my tickets since '95, so enjoy it. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thanks.
Safe
Bo.
travels, Bo.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, Bo.
Overall, what's your feeling of what's going to happen with this whole fiasco? Do you think these schools are going to follow through with their threats? One of the things that Coach said that is happening is that the Big 12 commissioner has called a meeting of all the ADs to discuss, the situation. And, I tell you what, if the Big 12 tells Texas Tech that, they're going to get banned or something, that changes the landscape.
Let me ask you a
Do they
question.
have the authority to do that, though, John?
I don't see how, but when you're a member of an organization, you have to comply by their rules. And if they come up with some sort of situation, I would expect Tech would, appeal it and get into a legal brouhaha with that. But that's more getting in the gutter,
It's crazy again because they're attacking an institution over an individual.
Yeah.
And again, it's like using a sledgehammer to kill a fly. I mean, I just look at this as, they're going after the wrong thing. I mean, the fact is, Tech's in the background. Yes, he was going to play. They did recruiting before all this came out. And so how does that make them the villain? I just can't comprehend the logic behind all that.
Well, let me give you a scenario. What do you think Brendan Sorsby is thinking about all this? Do you think possibly somewhere in his brain he could think, you know what, I'm really responsible for dragging this institution through the mud. I think I'll just go ahead and go into the NFL supplemental draft, and he has to declare by the 22nd of June. Don't you think that probably would be the best solution for everybody concerned?
I think he's probably thinking, I'll give you 3-1 odds they let me play next year.
What do you think about this, John? What if Tech just said, hey, what do we give you, $5-6 million? We'll give you half that and you go away.
Well, no, I mean, I if I was Tech, I'd say, look, we'll give you the $5 million. Just go to the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, cut bait and get over with.
Right.
That solves the whole problem.
Sebastian, what do you think?
Obviously, the situation is unprecedented. We need to remember Brendan Sorsby is a college kid, right? Is that an excuse to have such a hefty responsibility and decide to do something else with it? No, it isn't. And it shouldn't weigh down Texas Tech at all if the institution was unaware of what was happening. Right? So it's a situation where you have a college kid who made a mistake. That mistake has obviously caused questions of integrity, as it should. But as a whole, I think the NCAA is looking at itself and thinking, how can the policy be strengthened? And as this discourse is bound to continue, you'll probably start to see more analysts tie this situation into the Protect College Sports Act. Because at the end of the day, a piece of legislation in this area of sports gambling go hand in hand in the sense that lawmakers are currently trying to give the institution a little bit more of a boost on how much of their own rules they can lay down. We're walking through uncharted waters. There's a lot of voices and opinions on both sides of these discussions. And for very sensitive reasons, gambling is not to be taken lightly, especially if you have the sway and the consequence. But I expect the Sorsby situation to open up a retrospect not only in the sense of sports, but maybe in the sense of how we understand sports betting in our modern day society.
Not to mention, we don't know how deep Sorsby's in on this.
How many people do you think were on their phones in New York last night in the Garden punching up bets, and will be doing the same thing tonight in the NHL playoffs?
Right.
Same thing.
Yeah. I think I agree with something Tom said last week. I think if I was Tech, I would go to Sorsby and say, look, we'll agree to give you, either the full portion or a portion of what we promised you. We'll provide you whenever you're ready to come back and complete your degree. We'll support you any way you want to. You have access to the athletic facilities here to work out, but you need to go to the pro draft, and we need to end this right now. And, I just think that this will be something, a footnote, that it doesn't matter how innocent or guilty Texas Tech is. People 20 years from now will say, oh yeah, I remember that Texas Tech thing, and it really isn't a Texas Tech thing. Sebastian, he hasn't played it down at Texas Tech. So if he made a bet, it certainly wasn't against before. I mean, it wasn't for and against the Red Raiders. So all this lies at the feet of Indiana and Cincinnati, who, quote, knew he had this problem. And, the biggest hypocritical thing of all is Cincinnati is still suing Sorsby for $1 million to try and get money back after he transferred to Texas Tech. They ought to just be lit up, for just the hypocrisy is amazing.
I didn't realize that. That's pretty wild. They still want money.
They're trying. When Sorsby left Cincinnati to go to Tech, Cincinnati has sued him now for $1 million because, they want their money back. So it's crazy. Guys, any other comments on this, Kevin?
Not really, because, we've plowed this field about as thoroughly as you can. And, the bottom line is everybody's just incredulous that this guy, bet 40 games or plays 40 bets on his team at Indiana, and, a judge rules in his favor. And, maybe I shouldn't be so stunned. Steve Levy had a great quote the other night on ESPN when they asked him if it astonished him, and he just said no. You got a Lubbock judge giving a Lubbock athlete
But see, that is totally bullshit.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a Lubbock judge.
Well, who was he then?
He was a judge that was brought in after the Lubbock judge recused himself because he knew he was going to be in a situation of a conflict of interest. And this judge came in from Fort Worth, and he was a retired judge who got his law degree at Texas and Houston.
Yeah.
See, and that's the kind of stuff that just lights me up, because all this misinformation is just repeated and repeated, and you can't ever get out of that cycle.
Well, either way, it's outrageous. He got the ruling that he did.
I agree. And I don't think that court should have that kind of power.
Absolutely right. But it's just like, he's going to miss a game against Abilene Christian. Big deal.
Yeah.
How he could do what he did and get away with it is pretty incredulous.
Yeah.
But here's the main point. Listen, this totally takes any authority away from the NCAA.
It does.
About anything anybody does, if the NCAA comes down on it, they'll just take them to court and they'll beat them in court.
Well, hey, let's talk about something that's going on in your area. The Corn Ferry Golf Classic tour is coming to your region. Now, explain to everybody what that is. And Corn Ferry is a corporate name.
The corporate name. Yeah, it's the tier 2 of PGA Tour golf. It's all the guys who want to make it to the big tour, and it's subsidized. It started out as the Ben Hogan Tour in 1991, and it's gone through a number of iterations of names, and right now it's the Corn Ferry Tour. And this is the first pro golf event in Amarillo since 1991. When one year the Hogan Tour came here, ironically enough, at Amarillo Country Club. And at the time, Amarillo Country Club didn't have any minority members. And it was the same thing. And it was during the time when the PGA played in Shoal Creek, Alabama, and they didn't have any minority members, the club, and a lot of brouhaha was raised. And PGA said, you got to have minority members if you want to have a PGA event. Amarillo Country Club said, no, well, never mind, don't come back. Literally. And they haven't been back since.
Wow.
So that's a little footnote of it. But yeah, that's what happened. Anyway, it's pretty cool. I played the course they're going to play. I played it last Friday. They've got stands up. They've got beer tents up. I got my parking pass and my pass to get in and start covering on Thursday when the event starts. So it should be a lot of fun. I mean, they are expecting thousands of people every day, which is pretty rare for Amarillo.
Coach, what else is on your mind?
Well, we're pretty well into the major league season. We got 240-plus win teams, which are surprising. Braves and the Brewers are the only two teams right now in Major League with 40-plus wins. The Braves are the ones that are really kind of surprising. They're just cruising right now. L.A. is doing a good job as usual. But still some surprises. Tampa Bay still leading on the American League East ahead of my Yankees.
It's amazing how Tampa Bay does it with the limited budget that they have.
Yeah, with the low-tier budget team, which we talk about money all the time in sports. Some people can still do it the old-fashioned way. Work hard, go out and, basically draft well and have a good farm system and keep your players within your system over a period of time. And they seem to be doing an excellent job of that. So hats off to them. It's really kind of amazing, that they're, everybody keeps saying that, they're going to pull midsummer. They're still chugging along. They were 8-2 last week. So, they're doing a good job.
Kevin, what about the Knicks and the Spurs? We've got to mention the NBA. I know where your heart lies, but last night I think Wemby finally showed up.
The thing that's astounding me, John, is the ticket prices for those games. I'm thinking to myself, who could ever afford that? I remember when I was a kid and we would go down to Madison Square Garden, take the train into the city, and for $7, we could get a nosebleed seat, which was great for us.
Right.
We loved it. And I'm thinking, there ain't any $7 seats to be had anymore.
Painfully no cheap seats.
Down on 54th Street, right? You get a $7 ticket. Let's talk about also, Sebastian, we haven't even mentioned all these other stories that they're taking up the front pages. How about the World Cup? I know your dad is off to Miami and will be there for the next couple of weeks, but the World Cup starts in Mexico City, right? And then works its way up. What do you think the situation with the Iranian team is going to be? I saw where they're not going to let them in except to play. They've got to come in and out of the country in the same day.
Yeah, so there's a variety of games where the Iranian team is going to play in the country. Other than that, there's obviously special circumstances due through the situation that we're living through. But from what reporting has stated, there is an agreement to have friendly cooperations as the nation plays in the United States for this World Cup.
Did you see they kept an official from Somalia from coming in?
Nice.
Yeah, he wasn't vetted, so it was kind of funny. But then the other
supposedly-
thing I read today was the fact that there are a lot of tickets still available. These aren't sellouts. And again, we've talked about the exorbitant price. They jacked it up to the highest ever, and
Now they can't
all of a
give them
sudden,
away, right?
people aren't buying.
Yeah,
it's kind of like Trump saying about what he wouldn't pay the price to go see those because it was just too steep. If he won't pay the price to go watch it, what about John Q. Average Citizen? So I think there's a little payback there. I'm kind of glad to see the fact that these aren't sellouts, that there are actually now some tickets that are being sold for less than face value.
On record, this is the most expensive World Cup in history. Typically what you saw from years past, most recent example, Qatar 2022, is that you have tier ticketing prices. So for tier 1, you obviously have your expensive tickets, but I do believe that the most expensive ticket you could buy for a group stage game was $250. And the most expensive ticket of the tournament was around $1,600 to $2,000.
That's incredible.
It's always been a possibility for a soccer fan to attend a World Cup. Ticketing was accessible. Obviously, you do have different laws of how tickets are priced based on the country that you go to. So North America is not the same as Europe. And now you see FIFA still include tier pricing, but you also see the organization take control of reselling the tickets. What many fans thought that would bring would be a cap of how much the tickets could be sold. What FIFA has done is that they themselves can profit from the reselling market. I believe it's 15% from the reseller, 15% from the person who buys the ticket. And a lot of people have anecdoted that that's raised the ticket price. So to watch a World Cup game, you have tickets which are more expensive, and you also have the fact that North America is a huge continent. If someone is following their team, they could very well be going from country to country, or just making the trips from Dallas, Texas to Los Angeles, or Miami to Seattle. They're very long and treacherous, and it's something different that you see from Germany 2006, Japan and South Korea in 2002, where the World Cup is in a smaller country or countries. There's typically public transport that can manage the trips over there without necessitating to fly, and that's a practice that is pulled back with the U.S. World Cup.
I think that, there was a huge opportunity for soccer to come in to the United States and break through against some of the other sports franchises. But this ticket fiasco is going to ruin that opportunity. Here in Houston, I see it every day. There's a headline, Houston feels like it's left out because you can't afford the tickets to go see the games. So that's going to be a real thing to watch here and see if it becomes a missed opportunity for FIFA. I think they're just going to take the money and run.
If I can add something to that, John,
Sure.
Cornell, real quick. Vice put out an excellent documentary that interviews various legends from the 1994 soccer team, in which my dad elaborated on a couple of months ago. It's called America's Soccer. It's called Soccer's American Dream, and all of the episodes are available on YouTube. They last around an hour. If you have the chance, I recommend on watching them because they tell you the story of what it was like for the United States to host the World Cup, not feeling, at least other countries didn't believe that the United States belonged to place a bid for the World Cup because our soccer culture is less than other countries. What that 1994 World Cup does is that it sets a foundation of people knowing the game. But it also tells the story of how the U.S. Federation was able to sell tickets. What the then president commentates is that the Federation said, every World Cup game is sold out. It wasn't, but they wanted to create the illusion that it was. So then you have fans flocking to stadiums, many of which didn't know the game of soccer, but they wanted to feel a part of this big event because of what was being sold, and they bought tickets. To this day, it is one of, if not the most highest grossing World Cups in history. But if you look back at the prices, $50, $30. It was an accessible World Cup, and I looked at ticket prices with my cousin. $16,000, $20,000 if you want to watch teams like Mexico or the United States or even England.
Did you see what they did? Jerry Jones must be getting a lot of money from FIFA because they took all the signage off the stadium and they're making them sell Coke instead of Pepsi.
That process is because of FIFA. And in the World Cup, you cannot have any stadium that is sponsored. So all over the United States, you have stadium changes. Dallas Stadium, for example, the Chiefs Stadium is not going to be under a sponsor name. It's going to be under a generic name. Right. And as part of hosting a World Cup game, these stadiums and venues have to adapt to what FIFA is sponsoring. And you get into a heated debate about the sponsors and how it switches off these stadiums. But one of the debates that has also risen up is, how come when the World Cup comes to town, stadiums are integrating natural grass fields, but for the NFL, we get artificial turf? And that's something that has been debated since that announcement was made a couple of years ago. So definitely a lot of things to adapt that American sports aren't exactly used to, which the World Cup brings. And now the question lingers, is this World Cup going to be able to have a positive impact similar or larger to the one that the one hosted in 1994 did? And Americans hope so.
Well, I hope so, but right now the over under is, I would say, not. And I know you guys have been waiting for this follow up story here. The World Doping Association. You remember this story I talked about a couple of months ago, Lee? The World Doping Association was going to ban American government officials from the Olympics, from attending the Olympics and also the World Cup because they hadn't paid their dues. Well, they backed off on that and they had a meeting and they pushed it back until after the World Cup in September, or whether they're going to hold the American officials to account. But so far, they have not paid their dues. And I think what President Trump says is they're not going to pay their dues until this organization opens its accounting procedures to the public. So that's
that'll be another court case.
Yeah, that'll be another court case. Guys, why don't we go ahead and wrap this up for today? Let's go to Scattershooting. Coach K, you want to lead us off on the Scattershooting? What's your moment this week?
Hey, I'm still thinking about, with the NFL schedule and schedule going out, NFL games when I was growing up, Sunday was NFL football. I mean, that's when you watch. And, you maybe only got to see 2 games or 3 games because they were only over the public broadcast system, CBS, NBC, ABC. And now, first game of the season, Wednesday, then Thursdays, and then Fridays, and Mondays. It's again,
they're on online stuff that a lot of people can't get.
Yes and no. I mean, 87%. Looking at this, 87% of the broadcasts are still going to be over free TV. But, the prime games that you're looking at, again, are going to be streamed. They're going to be over streaming. And so the NFL has been really fighting a PR case right now, trying to make it look like, we're still good old guys. We're still doing it, for the fans. But at the same time, the image is kind of tarnished a little bit because, again, chasing the buck is becoming, to blemish the product. So, give me the football on Sunday. That's when I like to watch it. So Saturday college, Sunday
There you
pros.
go. I agree. Total agreement. Kevin, what's your Scattershooting moment?
Well, I'm wondering how much this Sorsby situation is going to grow. I mean, we've already got Nebraska and Georgia saying they're not going to play Tech anymore, although, we said those are kind of empty threats because they don't play them anyway. But, I'm wondering if more schools are going to join in and if the Big 12 athletic directors make issue of it, because let's face it, that Sorsby ruling was pretty outrageous, and I don't expect people are going to stand by and do nothing.
Well, speaking of the situation growing, what about that story that I led off with, that the betting has been found at the University of Texas? This is just the tip of the iceberg, don't you think?
Absolutely. They could find out an awful lot of things in that arena.
All right, Lee, what's your Scattershooting moment?
Something locally here in Amarillo. We just had there are a lot of halls of fame around the area. We had the 68th Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame this past weekend, and it always honors a number of people from this area who made an impact in sports. And I got to tell you, there was a guy who was put into the Hall of Fame this weekend that I'd never heard of before. His name was Harold Lewis. He was from Pampa, Texas, and he was a member of the 1958 Baltimore Colts NFL championship team.
Oh,
he apparently
wow.
he apparently played ball at maybe Oklahoma or somewhere out of Pampa and got drafted in the NFL, played in the NFL, played in the Canadian Football League, and played in the old AFL. So it's amazing when you kind of see names like that pop up that I'd never heard of. And he came back to Pampa after 6 or 7 years as an NFL player, pro football player, with a championship ring. And I just say props to him, because I don't think anybody in the media ever knew who this person was.
Wow.
It's kind of amazing. Yeah.
Played in that game we were talking about last week, with Alan Amici scoring the
he was in
touchdown.
that game apparently.
He was probably in that photo.
Yeah, he might have been. Pretty wild.
All right, Sebastian, you ready? What's your Scattershooting moment this week?
Cornell, I have 2 for you. I'm going to take
All right.
advantage that I was invited today. The first one is obviously the start of the World Cup, specifically the U.S. men's national team's first game. It's this Friday against Paraguay. With hosting the World Cup, between Mexico, the U.S., and Canada, these three national teams had the opportunity to be placed in pot 1 of the drawings. For those unfamiliar, there are various pots to place all 48 nations competing in the World Cup. Then you draw them from the pot, and that's how you decide each group. The U.S., Mexico, and Canada all draw pot 1, which is the pot with the best nations in the world, meaning that none of these countries are particularly facing any tough European nations. For the U.S. men's national team's group, their group has drawn attention for being even and being winnable for the U.S. men's national team. So they kick off against Paraguay on Friday, they go on to face Australia, and they close off the group with a match against Turkey. The expectation for this squad is to either finish second or win their group. And that expectation is going to lead off on Friday. See what this group is capable of. As this team has been labeled as a golden generation, you have multiple players that have become worldwide faces of soccer, like Christian Pulisic, who is currently playing for AC Milan. This group has a base that the 1994 Soccer World Cup team didn't. They are playing in leagues worldwide, and they also have a league in their own home country. So the expectation is for the squad to do better, and we get a preview of that on Friday to see whether or not the U.S. men's national team is going to go far. My second is the first ever Texas Girls State Flag Football Championship.
Yes.
It's going to be taking place on June 13th to the 14th at the home of the University of North Texas. Essentially, the Houston Texans and Dallas Cowboys came together to have leagues across all of Texas, spanning from El Paso to Fort Worth. Then it was the winners, at least here in El Paso, since we're in a particular situation where the Texans and Cowboys came together to take control of all 38 high schools competing, the Texans with 19 and the Cowboys with another 19. So both of these squads came together and formed a regional tournament. The Eastwood Troopers, my alumnus, won that very tournament. They're off to the University of North Texas to represent El Paso in the region, along with a whole variety of different girls flag football teams, which is undoubtedly one of the biggest growing sports. It's to take place in the Los Angeles 2028 Olympics. So this is definitely something to keep our eyes on.
Yeah, I think that sport, flag football, and really women's softball is poised to just have tremendous growth over the next couple of years. And they are supported by the major leagues, the NFL on the flag football side and Major League Baseball on the other. So that's worth watching. We'll watch that as we do this podcast. I guess let me finish up. This is sort of anticlimactic. I was so mentally drained from reading this stuff online about Sorsby. How about, do you guys know that the fastest pitch ever thrown in a Major League Baseball was by Aroldis Chapman, who threw one when he was with the Reds at 105.8 miles per hour. Well, that record doesn't stand anymore because this past week, the Mizz, Steve Mizz of the Milwaukee Brewers, threw a pitch 113.7 miles per hour.
Whoa.
That is just unbelievable. Now, when I think about somebody throwing a baseball that fast, Coach, I think of the Saturday Night Live episode where, was it Belushi? No, it was Phil Hartman that was the Russian weightlifter that killed Dylan, ripped off his arms. I don't believe the human body can do that long term. What do you think, Coach?
Well, again, we've talked about, arms and when you see guys throwing that kind of with that velocity and the stress and strain they're putting on the joint, it doesn't bode well for the individual to have any kind of longevity. I mean, that is so unbelievable. I mean, seeing, when we went to a game there and used to be Minute Maid, whatever it is now.
Right.
And I got to see the one guy and he was throwing 104 and that was unbelievable. And I've been around baseball all my life and I thought that, wow, how could anybody do that? And then to think somebody threw one 130, unhittable. I mean, you can't even blink your eye fast enough.
Yeah. No, and I watched him pitch. He pitched against Houston here last week, and he doesn't look like you think he would look like. And I think if there's anybody that's going to be able to sustain this long term before he has Tommy John surgery, he's slim and he's real lanky, which gives his windup is what causes that velocity, not the muscles that he's putting behind it. It's just a smooth, lanky delivery, and it's just amazing to watch. You're right. I mean, I don't think the other day they called one of those ABS strikes, and I'm thinking, well, the ABS system heard it over here because the batters are just not going to be able to respond to that. So,
did they check the radar gun or however they check nowadays to make sure it was right?
Oh yeah, of course, and I think it's shifted. It used to be the chicks dug the long ball. I think now the chicks are digging these miles per hour, and so anyway, that's my scatter shooting moment for this week. Everybody, thanks for joining us. I don't know what to say about the state of American sports. It's about the same as the state of American politics. It is just messed up right now.
Not good.
And but as long as it keeps percolating, we'll have all the latest news and stuff right here. And hopefully one of these days we're going to get back to telling stories about the good old days. But
Good old days.
yeah, thanks everybody for joining us.
All right.
We'll see you next week. Thanks. All right, and
Go
everybody that joined
USA.
us online, thanks again. We'll see you again. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Sports USA, available at our website at sportswithaz-usa.com. And remember to click and favorite so you can join us next time on sportsusa.com.